All right, back in action here. I totally forgot to get my mic unmuted, so I did have a live stream going, and then I canceled it just mainly because what I care more about, even more than the live stream, is actually the videos that get kind of published. It happens like an hour after I kind of kill the stream, so I'll delete the other video that was a few minutes when I kind of had a false start. All right, so what I was originally saying was, in my last video, I was talking about taking this send verification email, and we're going to get this into a background job. Specifically, I just want to demo it because there's some stuff that you get kind of for free, if you will, that are really beneficial, like retries. And then I kind of want to take this as a series where I'm going to then implement a bunch of things on top of these background jobs to kind of uniform them in a way to kind of do with more with messaging. And you can kind of see the path that this will go down. And I'll probably end up even creating, maybe as a little project here, as like a pipeline, kind of Russian doll style dispatcher part of this. It's kind of my grand scheme of things. So if you're into messaging, that type of stuff, that's where this is going. So the first step here is, like I said, we're going to add, I think I said last time, some ideas of what I was going to use. Ultimately, what I want to do is have different kind of what I would call maybe schedulers for these background jobs, or how they actually getting queued from storage. So what I'm going to use for this example is I'm actually going to use Hangfire. I wrote I have another video on setting up Hangfire in ASP.NET Core. So this will kind of be similar to that vein. If you want to find a condensed version of that, it's probably like a year or two old. But so let's see this package. So this is the package we're going to add. So this is Hangfire ASP.NET Core. Oops. So let's get that. We're going to add that to our web project. So let's add that in. And Hangfire requires storage. So the kind of the quote unquote official package for the most part you can use is the SQL, like SQL Server version. And for this demo, what I'm actually going to do is somebody actually created like an in-memory storage. So I'm going to use that rather than having to set up SQL Server. But there's ones for like MySQL, and even Hangfire has like a pro version which you can use Redis with, which I use professionally, like in my day job, which I highly recommend checking that one up. If you do use Hangfire as their pro Redis client or for storage. So I'm going to do, I think it's called memory, maybe? Memory storage. So I'm going to add this one as well. And then we'll get these configured here in ASP.NET Core. All right, so now we got those. I'm going to jump over to the startup. I can't actually remember what font size I had here going in with this from last time. I'm at 20. Let's go to 21. Just to make sure we're big enough. 22. That's not bad. Okay. So we need to add Hangfire into the mix here. So we can do that here. I'm assuming we want to do Hangfire server. And then this is going to be options, I'm going to assume. This is where we're going to add options. Is it memory? Oh, this is actually for configuring the server, so I actually don't want this one. Let's do add Hangfire. And it's probably memories in here. There we go, memory storage. And we'll also do dashboard. Oh, that's dashboard metrics. There's also a dashboard that you can use, but that's actually probably in not configure services. So this is how we're configuring Hangfire. Again, Hangfire is for any background jobs. If you're unfamiliar with it, you're about to find out. And we're just going to use the memory storage. So every time we restart, we're going to kind of be starting fresh, which is fine. So that's going to be in our configure services. Then let's go down to our, let's hide some of this stuff, our configure. So there's the health checks. And then our development, let's add it here. We'll do Hangfire. So use Hangfire dashboard. And by default, this will just live on the /Hangfire route. All right, so let's run this. And let's take a look. I'll show you the dashboard again if you're unfamiliar. That's how easy it is to add. All right, so we're running our app. And then if we go to /Hangfire, here's the Hangfire dashboard. And I do need to add a server because there are no servers. So basically we're kind of just in client mode right now where we can enqueue jobs, but we don't really have any servers listening. So let's jump back here, and I'm assuming, what other app.usingFire server? And then we can configure options. So we probably also need to configure server up here, I'm assuming. Let's rerun that now. I should have left that tab open. All right, so let's go back to Hangfire. And now we got 2 servers. That's weird. You must only need to do it once, basically. So I'm gonna get rid of this one. Looks like. All right, once this reloads, we'll probably still see these 2 because every time it starts up on a different port. The client or the server, that is. So let's go back here. All right, there we go. Oh yeah, we're using in-memory too, so the servers get cleared out. All right, so here's our, basically we have pretty much configured Hangfire. That's how simple it is. So what I'll do is an example for those unfamiliar with Hangfire is kind of the intent of this was for this email. So we want to get this email, this particular call, out of being synchronously in line in process of this request, so that we can basically make it be a background job. And then if something were to fail, let's say that our SMTP server's down or whatever the case may be, the network's down, to connect to it, whatever the failure is, Hangfire has by default, I haven't configured it, by default it will do 10 retries, and with each retry it kind of backs off a period of time, which is nice, so that if emails are failing, for example, if this request came in and this fails, at this point the user will probably get a 500 error or whatever the handling is of the HTTP issues. But it'd be probably nice if we could just retry and send that email whenever it's available. And again, this is the demo example, this is the eShop on web example, but you can see how when you're doing a lot of things that if you were using something like Poly, the library, again, you're doing all that in process. This is taking it out of process. So the way we can do all this is, now that we've added to our startup, we can add in the background job client. So what I can do here is add the iBackground job client. So this is from Hangfire. And then the way this works is you can enqueue, I'll see the signatures here. Basically, it's an expression that gets serialized, and you can have it be an action, which is going to be something that returns void, or you're going to have potentially something that's async that can return a func of a task or whatever the case may be. So The caveat with this example, though, is that this particular email, I can't just shove this in the background task exactly. So the way that I actually need to do this is this is an extension method, if I remember correctly, which isn't really ideal. And I'm not exactly sure. It was basically on here for, I guess, the purpose of just extending on this because it's pretty simple. But what I'm going to actually do is, let's see if anything else uses this. It doesn't. So I'm going to get rid of this from being a static class. And what we're going to do is I'm going to make this a actual class. We'll call this, what is this thing doing? This is confirmation. Wow. Confirmation, email sender, weird name. And then we'll just do this. So the reason I'm making this actually a class is because it will be easier to deal with here. So what I can do when I queue, I can specify a type parameter. What that gives me is that the job client, when it tries to actually enqueue this, when it actually tries to invoke it, will construct this method, and then we can see this method call now is, this is going to be our email sender. It's going to be that class, so I can call email sender dot our actual method, which is our email, and the link, which was the callback URL. And then let's get rid of this. Now you can see that this actually returns a task, and that's fine because when we were looking at the signature, we can actually return a task here. So I will save this. Let's run this again. And what I'll actually do is I'll break in here. So let's refresh our server. Okay, so we have no jobs running. Let me log in. I'll show you where that will actually get called. So if we log in, if we go to our account, this is where this send email verification email is, which was this right here. So I'll break here just so you can see that. So we'll click that, and we're making this particular call here. And now we are going to get down to our background job client. You can see that's Hangfire. Oops, didn't want to do that. So I'll step over this, and you can see now, I don't even want to break here. This is actually running in the worker. This actually happened so fast that you can't really tell, but let's go back to, oh, it's redirecting to the wrong spot. So let's, name of, what is this redirecting to? My account. That should have been a little bit better. I'll take that breakpoint out. You know what actually we'll do? Let's, actually I'll show you that this is working first. And then what I'm gonna do is I'll throw in here so you can see the retry. And see what it looks like in Hangfire. All right, so let's go back into, probably gotta log out, log in. Again, we're starting fresh every time because all this is in memory. All right, my account. Then let's go to here. Let's go to Hangfire. All right, so when I click this, I'll get rid of this breakpoint. So we're breaking in here, but this is in a completely different thread than what the actual HTTP request is in. So I will run this, and let's go back over to here. And if I go to jobs, you can see I have one succeeded job, and this is the job that we ran. So if I click on it, you can see basically what was actually called. So these are the parameters. This was my email address, and that was the confirmation URL. That was the second parameter. So this is what was actually invoked. And you can tell that happened quickly because I'm redirecting back to this page. So even if I leave this breakpoint in here, you can see that this is running separately. So this hits here, and I was already on this page. Like, this made the actual post call and redirected back to this account page without it's gone completely on separate threads. Because our background job, like our background worker in Hangfire, is doing this all in the background. So what I can do now to show you that this is failing, or when it fails, what will happen is let's just throw a new invalid operation exception. Let's run this. So let's say simulate there's some network issue or something that you're dealing with, SMTP or SendGrid or AWS SES. All right, let's go back here. I'll log out, log in. It's a pain in the ass doing this every time. There we go. Account. Send verification email. Get rid of this breakpoint. So we're throwing now. So if I look at, like, we're sending these, we're creating a bunch of jobs, and now we can see that I clicked it 3 times. We actually have failures in here now. And what this will do is we'll see our invalid operation exception. And like I said, by default, what it will do is it'll kick off a retry immediately. And then it will back off. So like by default, it's doing 10 retries. You can see it's going to happen again here in a few seconds. Whenever that occurs, make sure I don't have a breakpoint in here. And you can manually requeue these things to run them again. So you can see it just ran again. Few seconds. Which one's this one? Yeah, so this one failed twice. So this is the first failure, and this was our second failure, and then it's going to back off a little bit longer and then do it again. So that's kind of the benefit of something like Hangfire. Hangfire is just one of the kind of libraries that you can use to do this. And again, it's just a library, and it can use various storages to actually persist the actual jobs. I guess while we're on it, I can explain some other things that you can do, which is you can schedule jobs out in the future. So kind of in a cron fashion, you can do stuff just like cron, running at whatever interval that you want to is. So those are recurring jobs, what you defined here. But there's also scheduled jobs that you're going to basically say, I want this job to run once at this specific date time in the future. So there's scheduled jobs running once at its scheduled time in the future, or recurring jobs that you're going to run recurring, like on a periodic basis. So the cool thing about Hangfire is all the retries built in. The thing that I do not like about it is mainly the enqueuing interface of what I just showed here. And the reason is because you need the way, like, it serializes the expression, so you're kind of limited to how you actually want to, how you can call what you can run in the background. And one of the things that I really like doing, if you would have seen in my previous videos, is basically the idea of taking features and really essentially having kind of this whole portion right here would have been kind of a feature, if you will, of calling the verification email. And what we could have done is had this entire works, all this code, including sending the email, as a part of one particular job that we could run, that we could just enqueue. So what I mean by that is if we go back to the get my orders handler that I created, so for those unfamiliar, this was the kind of the first refactor that I did, where this project's already using Mediator. So what we're doing is on this particular route, we're just calling Mediator to get the view model, and then basically passing it to Razor to do what it needs to do. What I'm referring to here is for this particular manage controller is if my next refactor here will be to do that exact same thing, to create a single feature file, and where we'll basically send Mediator to basically run this particular code. Again, the whole point of this is getting our code to be our code and letting ASP.NET Core kind of be out of the way. So that's going to be the next piece of the puzzle here. And then the real heart of really what I want to get to is once I get that controller separated, is not to use Mediator necessarily to send it, but something very, very similar, which we are basically going to say, hey, Hangfire, and queue this particular command. Like it's going to be, send confirmation email, where we're going to pass in, we're going to use the command pattern just like we do with Mediator. We could say, here's this particular message, this command that we want to run the particular handler for, but we'll do that with Hangfire, and that will be done in the background. Because there's nothing in this particular code that is ASP.NET Core specific. So it's just this piece of the code right here that we really care about, maybe some model validation for incoming requests, but the rest of this stuff has nothing to do with ASP.NET Core. So we'll get that out and turn it into kind of the same mode here. We'll create a separate feature for it and start going down the path here of really creating messages. And if you want a little bit more insight, where I'm going to is then once we kind of start creating this, we're going to create I'm going to create a kind of a message pipeline, so you can see how you can separate different concerns for a message passing through various things, whether that be creating an outside transaction or database connection, that all different pipelines along the way of that handler can use. If you're using ASP.NET Core, that's going to feel very, very familiar all of a sudden, because you can think of ASP.NET Core's middleware and an HTTP request and HTTP context as the exact same thing, right? When you look at your startup, if I go back to the middleware, especially if you ever created middleware, you basically have the order of these matter, right? So your HTTP request goes through these different pieces of middleware, and each middleware can decide whether it wants to call the next middleware, or you can short circuit and just kind of exit up. So that's kind of where this is going. So hopefully my plan is tomorrow I'm going to do another one of this, which is just going to be refactoring to get it into a command. And then part 3 will be hooking it up to, or maybe even starting from scratch, creating some type of pipeline, just kind of as a exercise to kind of create a pipeline. So that's it for now. Quick short video, just how you set up Hangfire. Again, if you want to, also I'll link in the description the other Hangfire video that I have that's probably condensed. I don't know how well it fits with ASP.NET Core 3. I feel like this was a little bit different from what I just did right now, but I'll link in the description anyways. Okay, cool, thanks.